Thank you, Luvelda. Hi, everyone. It's great to have all of you at AdvantEdge. It's indeed been fantastic hearing Nandan and Mohit talk about the importance of connected automation and its relevance to reimagining businesses. That brings me to the topic for this panel discussion, a futuristic view of the intelligent enterprise. And when we talk about futuristic and intelligent enterprise, it essentially means adoption of automation, adoption of AI and machine learning to challenge the status quo. Breaking down functional silos, enabling faster innovation, superior customer experience, and ultimately to drive industry-leading performance. And to discuss this interesting topic, we're joined by three distinguished leaders, Arvind Subramanian, Chief Accounting Officer, Royal Philips.
Satish, happy to join in.
Welcome. Balaji Rangaswamy, Vice President, Information Technology and Data Analytics at Boeing.
Happy to be here, Satish.
Thanks, Balaji. And Anant Radhakrishnan, Executive Vice President, CEO and Managing Director at Infosys BPM.
Hi, Satish. Good to be there.
Thanks, Radha. So we have three leaders, who have seen the evolution of AI and how it's been shaping the future enterprises. Welcome to all of you. Let's jump right into it, Radha. You're managing one of the largest BPM companies in the world, and you've closely watched many large enterprises embrace AI and automation to drive various transformations. In your perspective, Radha, if I can ask, how has AI-led automation become an integral part of Infosys BPM customers? And how has it influenced their day-to-day lives?
Satish, every customer of ours across our client base of 230 plus clients across the globe are undertaking a significant digital transformation journey. What this digital transformation journey means is to digitize their processes, to make their enterprises more live, agile, have high speed, accelerated productivity, hyper productivity as they call, to make them responsive to the market customer needs, their ecosystem needs with their suppliers, and with their own associates. So while we do this, we reimagine their processes, and that's where we find the use of robotic process automation and applied AI plays a greater role in digitizing the processes, enabling them to clearly enhance experience, innovate their operating model, and become hyper-productive. So in every client of ours, there is a journey of transformation being undertaken as we speak of end-to-end processes getting digitized and transformed using automation and applied AI.
Very interesting. Rather quick follow-on. Obviously, this is a pretty large transformation and a huge change. How are your customers embracing this transformation?
Well, the transformation clearly has components of being driven top-down by the CXOs from a change and governance standpoint. Clear focus around responsiveness and being sentient, as we call it, to sense, feel, and respond using data. And clearly look at experience as a key differentiator while they look at the process. One of the examples of recent transformation, which Arvind will speak about, is our Finance Live transformation, which we have done at Royal Philips. Each of this involves agility, improved speed of response, enhanced experience, and hyper productivity. These are the key tenets, and obviously looking at the process end to end, eliminating, first standardizing processes, harmonizing it, eliminating the manual steps in it, and using the data in a much more intelligent way so that we can draw insights and create proactive actions are all the fundamental levers which are being used to drive this innovation and transformation.
Thanks, Radha. So essentially all elements of a typical transformation program is involved in this as well. So Balaji, over to you. If I may ask, obviously it needs a structured approach. You've seen many enterprises go through this kind of journey. So how have you, seen these enterprises plan for such a automation-led journey and a transformation which is led by AI and automation?
Satish, like we have a very strong automation program, which is based on the DevSecOps future state architecture, right? I mean, this includes taking the IT for IT process along with a TOGAF structure and placing the AI ML products around the architecture, right? And along with that, having a strong operation support services framework tools. I mean, along with that, like we do have IT RPA products, especially within our common services area, whether it is kind of automating the processes which have more of the connected processes and the disconnected processes for that matter, and including AI ML techniques to help with our forecasting demand planning forecasting options, right? Along with that, from an IT standpoint, we also fully embrace automated testing inside our current path to production on the CD side of the CI/CD tool chain to kind of yield large results.
Excellent. Pretty much the entire life cycle is covered in that sense. Um, and Arvind, you're managing one of the largest automation programs in the world. So congratulations on a successful, pretty much a worldwide acknowledged case study, if you will, at Royal Philips. Can you give us a glimpse into your automation journey?
Sure, Satish, and truly, I think it's we need to celebrate the success as a team because it's not one individual or one person, right? But very happy to share the journey we have taken. You know, Philips, we follow very strict lean principles, so we also use Hoshin as a process to define and execute strategic planning process. And we have a 5-year cycle in which we define that. So and we do refresh that every year. So back in 2017 Q4, when we were refreshing our 2015-2020 financial planning cycle, transformation, of course, was in the agenda. But we also saw that a lot of these transformation, which are primarily cost driven in many companies, we also wanted to bring in quality and speed into the whole game. And automation was a natural component which we had to fit in because you cannot drive. We had done nearshoring, offshoring, and moved a lot of activities and consolidated the GBS structure. So automation was an ingredient which we needed to bring in to really sustain the efforts that we have taken. So back in 2017 Q4, when we were deliberating that and refreshing our strategy, of course, RPA was one element which where we were evaluating how do we bring in. We got Infosys BPM team as well as the EdgeWork team, working with us to really define how it can work in the finance setting, especially in the finance operation setting. So that was a very quick decision that we had to take, and we planned it as part of our Hoshin program from 2018 to 2020. And we very ambitiously put a stick on the ground. We had no clue what it would yield, but we said, let's try to automate 1 million hours. We didn't want to put a dollar value or anything to it because, as I said, the idea was to really drive quality, sustain and improve quality, but also to improve the speed, especially in the closing and planning process, analytical process. You wanted to improve the throughput time. And the third piece, of course, productivity is a natural outcome of it. What we didn't realize, of course, is the softer benefits, which we later on realized is like knowledge management becomes much more easier. And also the elements on resilience, with pandemic striking us in 2020, that was an interesting component which came into light as well. So I think those are, and the engagement of the team who are involved in this, that also improved. So I think those are important component. But the journey itself started as part of our strategic planning process. And one of the key element was it was function driven, right? So we wanted to drive this automation journey as a finance led process with a clear commitment from the CFO, rather than being, saying that this is what we want and give it to IT to implement it, which would have kind of lost its. I think if I look back, I think that was one of the important ingredient which also helped us to execute this successfully.
Brilliant, Arvind. A million man hours. Very few enterprises in the world talk about million man hours of savings. So, and it's great to be partnering with you on this journey. You spoke about resilience, and that's been a topic of conversation, especially after the pandemic has hit. And many enterprises, have shown that the ones who focused on resilience, invested in resilience, have been able to weather the pandemic much better than the ones who didn't. Right? And Balaji, in your experience as an industry leader, how do you think enterprises worked towards being resilient? Can you please talk about your experience, how automation has played a role in this?
Yeah. I'm probably going to give it from two different contexts, Satish. Like one, when you look at it, especially within the supply chain space itself, these are definitely not normal times, right? So supplier resiliency, like dealing with like such a big group of suppliers that we have to kind of work through from our supply chain standpoint, having that abnormal times has had its own set of challenges and requires its own set of solutions. This is where AI ML techniques actually play a big role. So you can even predict what the forecasting is going to look like, because it has hit their abnormal times. They hit very quickly, and you need to kind of go through that. In addition to that, I mean, even within the IT space of that software supply chain, right? How code needs to get released and automated. This has been a major area of concern as we look at extending beyond our traditional look of a materials supply chain, right? More and more, the IT supply chain also has become one of the critical path that requires remediation and optimization to kind of maintain that resilience.
Thanks, Balaji. Very interesting. Arvind, can you double click a little bit on how you mentioned resilience, but how specifically did automation help Philips from a resilience standpoint?
Yeah, I can absolutely, it's also very close to my heart, because when pandemic struck us, it was completely, and I have to say the automation was not done in a view of that the pandemic is coming. Nobody had a clue about it. But hindsight, we were so glad that we did that journey. I have 2 years ahead of it. Because definitely, especially in a kind of a shared service environment where large part of our transactional processing happening, big part of our workforce is moved, and what is also critical is the month closing and the quarter closing and external reporting doesn't stop, right? So that goes on as a clockwork. And while we had prepared ourselves, a BCP plan from one country to another country and creating offsites to support, all went out of the window, because this was a pandemic, and true to its nature, across countries, across globally, it hit us, and we had the challenge across all over the place. And very quickly, we had to gear to working from home, which meant we needed to, in many cases, move desktops, with, especially in shared service environment, to the houses, create VPN and create, access control, etc., in individuals to execute those confidential processing that people do. And by 2020, early 2020, we were almost halfway through our journey, and roughly about 600 man hours automation we had executed, and large part of this thankfully was in R2R space. So it was to that extent simpler for us to just move and remotely manage the bots, rather than having to deal with individuals. And overseeing the bot was easily possible from a remote setting. And also the fact that we developed this in a cloud environment, for us to scale up and scale down was relatively easy. and increasing the capacity of the cloud, it was also quite helpful and easy for us to do it. So I would say, I mean, for us to easily come back and execute, of course, we had some challenges, but without disrupting our quarterly report out and analytics that we need to drive our businesses, I have to say it almost felt seamless moving from one way of working to another. So I would say that this has really been a huge effort. But also for me, part of our resilience is also the agility that we create in the organization to adapt. Right? I'll give you another very interesting example. We carved out almost 2.5 billion of our business as part of the domestic appliances, and we had to do it in a matter of a few weeks, and this again provided a phenomenal value. The whole automation provided so much of a value that we were able to carve it out within what we used to do over a matter of 3 months. We could do it in over a matter of 3 weeks, which was just, we couldn't have imagined it without the right kind of automation that had gone in the R2R and consolidation space.
Brilliant, Arvind. We can keep hearing you for a long, long time with so much experience that comes in. So maybe just I'll extend, if you were to pick some good, great impact stories, right, from your this very large scale transformation program. Would you want to touch on a few more? Resilience was one of them, but are there any other such that you would like to elaborate on?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk a lot on this because it's been very close to my heart. As I said, we had dunning letter, cash application in credit and collection process. We had query management in P2P process. But what is probably more close to me is the consolidation part, because that is also where the entire financial reporting becomes translated into a consolidated view as an external, from an external reporting perspective. And we had bring in automation in this space as well, and we had close to 30 FT worth of activities which got automated. May sound small, but the way we looked at it from an end-to-end perspective was phenomenal, and we could actually, if you look at the month closing process and consolidation, we do our consolidation, closing and consolidation in 7 days period, right? And the last 3 days are complete bottleneck with almost everybody working on it. And with sickness and other things, this is the most sensitive period, right? If you miss out on this, the whole reporting goes for a toss, and also the financials availability for the organization gets missed out. So it's becomes a very important area. Bring in automation in this space has helped us to relieve not just the ability to consolidate and report, but also has got, we can focus more on what matters, right? Reviewing the financials before it gets reported out. So the quality of review and oversight becomes much more important. So it's not that it gets reduced, it's an efficiency, but we are able to put in more quality reviews around the financials that we report out. So I would say this is probably the best use case I always flash around. But there is also, the areas where we have done automation in the payroll processing, which also, multi-million-dollars of payroll gets processed every month, and accuracy becomes a very important area. So, automation has gotten a lot of quality around it in this space as well. So, as you say, I can go on when I talk about these use cases, but for me, the top one being the closing consolidation is a very important one.
Brilliant, Arvind. It's just so well said. When people think of automation, they think of time saving. That's a natural instinct. But there's so many more dimensions that you've explored and you articulated, whether it is quality, reliability, efficiency, now resilience as well. And that's an incredible story. Balaji, over to you. We've partnered on the automation journey for many years. Is it possible for you to share some high impact stories as well in terms of what automation has done in your experience?
I would say I can resonate with everything that Arvind talked about, because these, especially in the back office functions, right? Like whether it is on the financial processes or it's on the warehouse operation processes. These are the areas where there are so many repetitive transactions that kind of happen, right, on a daily basis. And this is where we have seen most of the benefits kind of come through. So specifically within the warehouse operation space, around automating across the multiple different systems, because as you can imagine, uh, I mean, we just completed 105 years in July. Uh, a company of this size has gone through so many different sets of systems that basically exist, and you have integrations, but still you will have like a plethora of systems that have to kind of like have like data managed through, and which is where we have used more of these RPA automation bot tools to help bring the efficiencies, predominantly in the areas of finance and supply chain processes.
Thanks, Balaji. Very interesting. Rather, those were incredible numbers. Very rarely do we see two leaders who have been successful in their automation journeys. Great to hear both of them. What do you think are the implications of larger transformation, right, that AI and automation are bringing about, rather?
Well, clearly it helps in innovating the client enterprise to deliver enhanced experience. We heard about increased resilience, compliance, our ability to enhance business value for all the stakeholders involved. Phenomenal opportunity indeed to look at. If you look at the supply chain itself, you look at the procurement side or the outbound supply chain side, the ability to digitize documents, extract meaningful value from them, and trigger off insightful actions promptly. This is really bringing the best of technology and humanware together in a purposeful and meaningful way for our clients and for enterprises. That's what automation and applied AI together can do.
Thanks, Radha. In fact, you know what? There are some questions coming up. And the first question is, you touched on it, is intelligent document processing shaping up as an integral part of automation? And I wanted to ask you, because you work with so many more clients, and you said you gave your perspective. Balaji, or Arvind, do you want to add on to this on intelligent document processing? Are you trying anything in that space? Do you see that as a logical extension of automation?
Absolutely. I think we are in a very early stage, but we are evaluating that because that is definitely going to be one of the next step, because we have automated the back end side of it. Now, if you want to further progress to the upstream part of the businesses, you need to enter into these kind of NLPs and intelligent automation space.
Brilliant. Balaji?
Satish, like what I would add there is we are on this journey of a contract lifecycle management and a contract digitization, right? Because as you can imagine, with the thousands of suppliers that we deal with and the contracts that are there, there's so much stored in the paperwork, right? And being able to extract that and into getting into contract terms and then kind of managing the supplier performance, that becomes pretty key. And that's where I would say that we have been making tremendous amount of progress between our CLM and CDE initiatives.
Brilliant. Let me see if I can squeeze one more question. It's slightly loaded, so we'll have to keep it crisp. Maybe Balaji, over to you. Do you believe organizations are looking at automation as a strategic program, in their pursuit towards becoming intelligent enterprise? I think essentially the topic of the panel itself, anyway, the discussion. But over to you.
Definitely, organizations are looking at it. I think it's a matter of how it's evolving. It would have started off from an automation standpoint, but that is where it's kind of extending beyond that into the AI machine learning techniques, right? So the automation piece is basically expanding more into that intelligent enterprise, trying to gather data and act on it, making it actionable insights. That's definitely, I'm kind of seeing enterprises do that.
Fantastic. It's been so insightful. I'm seeing the red light flashing. Looks like we're up on time. Radha, Arvind, and Balaji, it was great to hear all three of you share insights, and it just shows how wonderful it is to speak to practicing leaders and people who've really, kind of led their life, if you will, in seeing this transformation. Thank you very much for joining AdvantEdge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, this
Thanks,
brings us
Satish.
to the closure of this panel discussion. Hope you have a great event, and back to you, Lavelda.